Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so I think we should be ready to call the meeting to order. So Faye, would you do the roll call, please?
Randy Rickert,
Here.
Jason Dale,
Here.
Chris Wright,
Here.
Linda Newton Curtis,
Here.
Matthew Mansfield,
Here.
Jose Vallapando,
Here.
and Elise Steffen and Lainey Quinn are absent.
Do we have anybody who is not in the room for public comments?
No.
Okay. So the first thing on the agenda is the consent calendar for the Planning Commission meeting minutes of 5/8/2025. Could we get a motion?
Planning Commissioner Wright moves to adopt Planning Commission meeting minutes of May 8th, 2025.
Can we have a second?
I'll second that.
So just a general, all those in favor, say aye.
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 So motion passes. So the next thing on the agenda is the quasi judicial public hearing regarding a conditional use permit and minor modification for a tower extension and collocation at 500 East Illinois Street. We have one person who is here this evening to give public testimony. But before we do that, I'd like to call for abstentions, sorry, bias, ex parte contact, and objections to jurisdiction.
None.
Okay, hearing none. Faye, would you read the quasi judicial announcement sheet, please?
ORS 197.797 requires certain statements to be made at the commencement of a public hearing. The applicable city and state zoning criteria must be listed. This means that we must advise you of the standards that must be satisfied by the applicant prior to the approval or denial of an application. The planning staff will list the applicable criteria during his or her presentation of the staff report. Persons wishing to participate in this hearing must direct their testimony to the evidence toward the criteria stated by the planner or other specific city or state criteria which you believe apply. You must tell us why the testimony or evidence relates to the criteria. Any issues which might be raised in an appeal of this case to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, must be raised in person or by letter at the local level prior to the city approving or denying the application. The law states that the issue must be raised in enough detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond. This part of the law is known as the raise it or waive it requirement. If you do not bring it up now, you can't bring it up at LUBA. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval in enough detail to allow the local government or its designees to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing on an application, and any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission will grant such a request through continuance or extension of the record.
Thanks, Faye. Could we hear the staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is James Singwell, one of the assistant planners. And tonight we're going to be reviewing a modification to a telecommunications facility at 500 East Illinois Street. case file number PLNG 2511. The applicant is Centerline Communications on behalf of New Singular Wireless, PCS LLC, and the owner is Newburgh Industrial Park LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit and minor modification approval for a co-location, tower extension, and expansion of the compound at an existing telecommunications site. The zoning is M2 light industrial, and applicable criteria include minor modifications, conditional use permits, airport overlay subdistrict, and the telecommunication facility special use standards. The existing facility is approximately 644 square feet, and the proposed expansion will add approximately 400 square feet on an approximately 6.18 acre parcel. The site currently houses industrial uses and the existing cell tower. The adjacent property is zoned residential and commercial to the north, residential to the east and west, and light industrial and residential to the south. Here you can see an aerial view of the subject property with the cell tower project area highlighted to the right. And here is the zoning map for the parcel. The site plan shows the telecommunication facility to the east of the site and the existing structure on the west. The submitted elevations show the proposed extension and the stealth camouflaging installation for the extension. And then the land use plans also show the ground facility extension, which is on the right portion of the layout there. The cell tower was originally approved in 2017 through CUP 17-1 and DR2 17-1, and a proposal to extend the tower 20 feet and expand the ground facilities was approved by the Planning Commission in 2023. However, that approval has expired. As included in the supplemental memo you received on Tuesday, the proposed modifications are submitted as an eligible facilities request under section 6409 of FCC rules. Under those rules, for eligible modifications, a state or local government may not deny and shall approve any eligible facility request for modification of an eligible support structure that does not substantially change the physical dimensions of the structure. The applicant's memo attached to that supplemental memo included the thresholds and criteria for that eligible facilities modification. The eligible modification includes the proposed extension will increase the tower's height by 20 feet, add antennas that extend less than 20 feet horizontally from the edge of the tower, add 2 additional equipment cabinets to the facility's lease area, and expand the lease area eastward by 15 feet. Moving on to the approval criteria, site design reviews may be modified through either a minor or major modification review. The code defines minor modifications as those which are in substantial compliance with the layout, uses, characteristics, and conditions of the original design review. Generally, the characteristics of the project are within 5% of the original proposal. The director may approve a minor modification under a type 1 procedure upon finding that the modification is substantially consistent with the approved design review, is consistent with the provisions of the code and conditions of approval, and does not have a substantially greater impact on the surrounding properties than the original plan. This modification is elevated through the type 3 process being submitted concurrently with the conditional use permit. The proposed facility modification will expand the lease area approximately 15 feet to the east, add antennas, ground, and accessory equipment, extend the tower height by 20 feet, and add concealment apparatus to maintain the stealth nature. The current facility is located on approximately 0.23% of the subject property area and would cover approximately 0.38% following the expansion. Moving on to take a look at the site design review criteria that were originally approved for substantial consistency. The proposed tower extension will include additional stealth faux monofur camouflaging retaining the site design compatibility. Regarding zoning district compliance, the tower is located within 2,000 feet of another telecommunications facility, which requires a conditional use permit. The extension also would bring the tower to more than 100 feet in height, which also triggers the conditional use in the M2 zone. The subject property is located within the airport overlay sub-district, which we will take a look at later in the staff report. And looking at setbacks and general requirements, there is not a height limitation in the M2 zone, except that within 50 feet of a residential zone, which the tower is beyond. The proposed modification does qualify as the eligible facilities request, which supersedes the city's setback requirements. The site does not currently have the landscaping required in the original approval, which this approval is conditioned on providing, and which we will also address later. Any changes to signs will require the applicant to comply with NMC 15.435. There is sufficient existing parking on site, and the proposed modifications will not impact existing circulation or parking. The project is not a manufactured dwelling, mobile home, or RV park, does not modify the existing circulation to require alternative circulation or impact traffic generation to trigger a traffic study. To touch on the landscaping element, Planning Commission Order 2017-2 approved an alternate landscaping plan to meet the installation standards for telecommunication facilities, which is currently not present on the site. Approval is being conditioned on provision of this previously approved landscaping and buffering, or a substantially compliant alternative. Given these findings, the proposed modifications of the existing wireless telecommunications facility substantially complies with the original conditional use permit and a site design review. Moving on to the conditional use permit criteria. A telecommunications facility that is over 100 feet and within 2,000 feet of another tower is a conditional use in the M2 zone. The first criteria is that the location, size, design, and operating characteristics of the proposed development are such that it can be made reasonably compatible with and have minimal impact on livability or appropriate development of abutting properties in the surrounding neighborhood, with consideration to be given to harmony in scale, bulk, coverage, and density, to the availability of public facilities and utilities, to the generation of traffic and the capacity of surrounding streets, and any other relevant impact on the development. The proposed ground equipment will be obscured from view by landscaping and a fence. The facility will be unmanned, which will not generate additional noise or traffic in the neighborhood. The existing wireless facility is a camouflaged, stealth design facility consisting of a faux monofur tower. And the proposed minor modification will maintain the camouflaged nature and existing stealth operating characteristics of the wireless facility by installing faux branches. The location, size, and design of the proposed development are reasonably compatible with and will have a minimal impact on the livability of abutting development in the surrounding neighborhood. The second criteria is that the location, design, and site planning of the proposed development will provide a convenient and functional living, working, shopping, or civic environment in a way as attractive as the nature of the use and its location and settings warrants. The location provides a functional and capacity improvement in coverage for AT&T and will contribute to the availability and quality of wireless communication in the central areas of the city. The faux monofur design of the extension is an appropriate addition to the existing tower and will not detract from the residential character of the abutting areas. The third conditional use criteria is that the proposed development will be consistent with the code. The existing facility was approved under Planning Commission Order 2017-2, approving the conditional use permit and site design review, subject to conditions of approval to be consistent with the code. The concurrent minor modification and additional telecommunication facility special use standards will be consistent with the code upon adherence to the conditions of approval in tonight's order. Next is the airport overlay subdistrict standards. The procedures section in subsection 40 includes that it regulates development permits in the airport approach safety zone or the displaced threshold approach zone. The subject property is not within either of these zones and the requirements are not applicable. Also, FAA notice is required if the construction would intrude into an imaginary surface defined by the code, which at this location will be approximately 118.5 feet. The proposed tower will be 115 feet in height. And also FAA and Oregon Department of Aviation approvals are conditioned elsewhere in the staff report as applicable. Moving on to the limitations of the airport overlay subdistrict. First, no structure may penetrate the airport imaginary surfaces. The subject property is within the conical surface of the Sportsman Air Park, And that service is approximately 177 feet at the location of the tower, higher than the 115 feet proposed height. Second, high-density public uses are not permitted in the airport approach safety zone or displaced threshold approach surface zone. And again, the property is not located in either of these zones. The subject property is also not located in the runway protection zone. And so C is also not applicable. There is no height limit in the M2 zoning district apart from within 50 feet of a residential zone. The tower is located further than 50 feet and the airport overlay height limit shall govern. Because the property is not within the airport approach safety zone, E is not applicable, prohibiting glare producing materials, and the site is greater than 1,500 feet from the airport, so it's not a noise sensitive area. Moving on to the special use standards for telecommunication towers. These special use standards have approval criteria for new towers or replacement of existing towers in subsection 190. Because the project does not include a new or replacement tower, the criteria are not applicable. Subsection 200 includes the required application materials for telecommunication facility applications. The applicant provided required materials or indicated that they would be provided prior to the issuance of building permits, and approval is conditioned that prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall submit any additional engineering report elements required by the building official for building permit review. Subsection 210 provides additional conditions of approval applicable to telecommunications facilities. First, the applicant shall provide information or approvals from when required from the Federal Communications Commission, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Oregon State Department of Aviation. The applicant has indicated that they will be provided prior to the issuance of building permits, and their submittal is also a condition of approval. The second special use condition of approval relates to the franchise or license agreements when the facility is located within a public right of way. This tower is not located in the right of way, and the criteria are not applicable. Finally, the special use standards include installation standards for telecommunications facilities. First, the applicants pursue shared use of existing towers. The proposed project is for the shared use of a tower and does not propose a new or replacement facility. Second, special setbacks for telecommunication facilities, including setbacks from right-of-way and residential zones. The supplemental memo received includes documentation that the proposed project is a qualifying eligible facility under section 6409, and that the city may not deny and shall approve the modifications that do not substantially change the physical dimensions of the structure as outlined in the applicant's attachment to that supplemental memo. Next, standards require the sharing of new towers. No new towers are proposed, and the project is to facilitate the sharing of an existing tower. Visual impact standards are included, and the existing facility is camouflaged with stealth equipment, which will be extended to the proposed tower height extension, maintaining the originally approved appearance. Parking is required on site, and the proposed facility modifications do not alter the provided parking areas that meet that standard. The standards also require minimal impact of vegetation, and the proposed lease area expansion will add landscaping where none is currently existing along the boundaries of the lease area. The final installation standard regulates landscaping. The original approval in Planning Commission Order 2017-2 approved an alternate landscaping design, which included a site obscuring fence and a 4-foot tall hedge on the east and west side of the ground equipment. The approved landscaping is not currently on the site, and the applicant is proposing to install the landscaping buffer on the east and west sides of the lease area. The original alternative plan approval provided 17 shrub plantings, and 9 are provided in the current landscape plan. So approval is being conditioned that prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall submit updated landscaping plans that meet the landscaping originally approved in 2017 or a substantially compliant alternative. So staff's recommendation is that the commission move to adopt Planning Commission Order 2025-6 with conditions as amended in the supplemental memo, approving a conditional use permit and minor modification PLNG 2511 for telecommunications facility at 500 East Illinois Street, Yamhill County Tax Lot R3218 DD 1000. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, staff. Do we have any questions from the commission?
Commissioner Wright, just to let everybody know, I sent a plethora of questions earlier and staff already did reply to me and I thank staff for that. That's all for me.
Okay, then let's move on to public testimony. I believe we have Karina Rice. Yeah, please come up. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I apologize. So the applicant, over to you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Again, good evening. I wish I could have attended, but it's about a 4.5 hour drive for me or down, so it wasn't going to work this time. But hopefully, I will get down there to visit your community. My name is Philip Kitsis, Kitzes, and again, I'm with Centerline. We've been working with staff on throughout this project, and I have to say it's been a very fine process. A lot of give and take, back and forth, easy to communicate. As he presented the project, it is very well stated. We don't have much to add. We will do the complementary landscaping and make sure we get all the additional reports that are necessary. Again, this is when we did our pre-app meeting, we had gone through whether or not this was an eligible facilities, and I had stated that it was, and there was concurrence, but knowing that we still would go through the same CUP process and design review, it was not. We wanted to make sure that that staff in the city gets a project that they're acceptable to them and they approve of. Excuse me. So I'm basically here to answer any questions. I don't, just a little bit of reference on the extension will be a breakaway extension. So the pole will drop straight down. So if there's safety concerns with adjacent neighbors, it's the pole will break before the whole pole goes away. So that's the design of what we're doing. To help mitigate, the extra height. And we, again, if you looked at the plans, it'd be nice if we were going to the top level, but the way the lease is written, we're just taking the spot of the original carrier, and that carrier is moving up 20 feet. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I will try to answer as many questions as I can, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much for that. So, we have somebody in the room to provide some public testimony. Karina Rice, would you like to come up, please? And then if you press the little button, it'll activate the microphone. And if you could state your name. And then you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Planning Commission Committee members. My name is Karina Rice, and I am a resident of Newburgh, and I actually live on Vermilion, which is located parallel to the railroad tracks. It's a very short street. Anyway, I'll get right to it. I don't have an issue with the aesthetics. I mean, it's since 2017. My questions are for Mr. Kitzes. What additional safeguards will be installed on and around the monopine? Will there be lights? Will there be beacons? Will there be visibility markers? We are not in the path for the airport, but occasionally there's, air traffic. Okay, small planes, helicopters. 20 feet doesn't seem like a lot in the big picture when you go look at it. It's about from here to there, okay? Additional lighting, what kind of visibility markers? Because for people that are familiar with the area, oh yeah, that's where the cell tower is that looks like a tree. But for people that are not familiar with that, and at night, beacons, lighting, visibility markers, like on the power lines, the great big orange balls, those are the visibility markers. That's one of the questions that I have. What additional safeguards will be installed? And the kill switch, if something malfunctions, where's the kill switch? Who has access to it? If people here in town call 911 and contact dispatch, will dispatch say, okay, let me see who that is? No, I would like for dispatch, for that to be on the top of the list for dispatch. Yes, contact, is it gonna be FCC? Is it gonna be FFA? Is it gonna be AT&T? Who's going to be the boots on the ground person that can go and shut off the power? Okay, I'm not familiar. I mean, it's not gonna burst into flames or anything like that, but what's gonna happen? It's very reassuring to know that if it breaks, the pole will fall straight down. That was one of my concerns. Since 2017, I've not seen it sway or, move or anything like that. My concern is somebody or something running into it. So that was a safeguard question, the kill switch and the point of contact. And also what kind of fire suppression system will be in place? What's in place now? So those are my questions for Mr. Kitz's. I have other questions, but I know I have 5 minutes. My final comment, in the last few years since it's been there, since the existing tower has been there, the area, the property that it's on, it's behind the chain link fence in the parking lot where PPM Technologies are. No issues with that whatsoever. The other little triangular piece that's adjacent to the railroad tracks, that's a no man's land. That's ODOT property. They don't mow it. They don't take care of it. Occasionally, somebody will come by and mow it on the other side of the railroad tracks on my side of the street. No man's land. Recently, there's been activity for somebody to go out there and mow it and cut down the dead trees and, oh, okay, great, thanks. And then this comes out. Okay. I'm not trying to stop it. I'm not opposed to it. I just want to know what's going to be in place. Safeguards, fire suppression, kill switch, point of contact. So that would be my question to, the commission and to Mr. Kitts.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind. May I respond to her?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for coming in. As the rest of the commission knows, I think, I'm from the airport. I would run the airport there so I can answer some of those questions for you. So where that is quite a ways from the flight path at all. And at that height and that location, if an aircraft, either fixed wing or helicopter, is that low, they've got a lot worse problems than that tower. And the lighting that's on it sufficient, whatever it is. I mean, there's going to be a red light or something that's on it now is sufficient for, to be seen. But in normal operations, anything that's not an emergency, there's not going to be airplanes anywhere near it. Like, as an example, for our normal traffic pattern, we always keep people to the east, away from town. So like, at a typical airport, you always fly a left-hand pattern to come and land. But for us, you fly an opposite pattern to stay on that side of the city, so you're not flying over, it's just safety. So if something happens, you know, you're not directly over houses in the city and downtown and all that stuff. And this area falls into that. So there's almost no situation there should be an airplane anywhere near it. So that's for that. And then for the existing, maybe staff can answer that as far as lighting and that sort of thing.
Well, I think one comment on the lighting piece is that, the Oregon Department of Aviation did provide a comment that, the development would need to go through their review process. And so that's part of the conditions of approval, that prior to the building permit process, they'll submit the approval letters from the Department of Aviation, who reviews striping and lighting and things like that. So prior to anything being installed, the state aviation department will kind of provide, their approval. I think I defer to Mr. Kitsis on the existing, equipment and safety features on the site.
Hello. Hi, good evening to you, Karina. As far as the kill switch, or if something goes wrong, there is a backup generator there that would fire back up for emergency service, and there's no such, if something were to occur, AT&T is directly responsible, and there will be signage on the compound for immediate point of contact, because that's a requirement as a licensed carrier. So, and the compound will be comparable as far as like to discourage people from jumping in. There'll be safety wire up top. That's one of the safeguards that we can do. Right now, we're not proposing any lighting because we're not in the pathway, but we would always, if for some reason the FCC or FAA, ODA requires some kind of lighting, we would put that on there. It's not something, they don't typically light facilities, but if that's something staff would wanted, or, we go through the building permit process and that's something that's needs to be added, sure, we'll add some kind of lighting system on the base, so people, if that's what the concern is. As far as fire suppression, I don't believe there's any fire suppression out there now. We're not proposing fire suppression, but that doesn't mean, again, there's another process that we have to go through, the building permit phase. And if it comes up that there has to be some kind of suppression system on site, then that gets included in the package. So we will, when we get to building permit, we will submit our information after we've done our aviation review. If additional comments come up that are required by staff, we will obviously oblige and include them in the final plans. Does that answer you?
Yes, thank you. I just, like I had stated previously, there's not ever been any kind of incident. I mean, I don't anticipate anything like that. I just want to know that there's something in place. Should something happen, it's in a neighborhood, it's the railroad track that is hardly ever used, but and there is a chain link fence around it now. I'm not aware of any kind of anybody trying to get in there and do anything. I'm just trying to be proactive.
Well, sure.
We thank you for your testimony, Ms. Rice. Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate-
And I'm assuming, Faye, that there were no other proponents or opponents that we needed to hear from?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay, thank you. And so, Mr. Kitsos, do you have anything else to say in terms of your rebuttal?
I actually agreeing with what's going on. I do appreciate when the public comes out and asks questions, because it gives us a chance on what the concerns are and how we can better address as we go through the process. So I'm comfortable with staff's presentation and I'm comfortable with our proposal. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So I want to close the public testimony portion of the hearing, and are there any final comments from staff?
Staff's recommendation would be that the commission move to adopt planning commission order 2025-6 with conditions as amended. And that amendment comes from the supplemental memo, approving the conditional use permit and minor modification PLNG 2511 for telecommunication facility equipment at 500 East Illinois Street, Amo County Tax Lot R 3218 DD 1000. I believe Commissioner Wright.
Okay, so we will move to the deliberation process. Commissioner Wright, I believe you have a comment or a question.
Yes, I was actually, did you already close public comment? Or can commissioners ask questions at this time?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for being here this evening. My question was also about the emergency backup generator. I was wondering if it was a battery pack or solar and or gas operated, and how old it was, and if the generator is maintained. And do you guys actually start it up like one time a year on a maintenance schedule or anything? Can you give us a comment about that, sir?
Point of order. I believe the chair already closed the public record.
Oh, okay.
For questions to be asked of applicants, we'd have to go through the process of proponents.
So in the future, when you say public testimony is closed, does that include commissioners? Because it seems like in the past, after public testimony was closed, then commissioners were able to ask questions.
Ask questions of staff, not the applicant.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Commissioner Dale. All right, we're on to deliberation.
And sorry, Commissioner.
Oh, that's fine. It's all right. No, thank you for that clarification.
So I have a question about the landscaping, which I know has got nothing to do with the actual tower itself. And I'm wondering, in the application, it says something about 17 arborvitae. And so I know those arborvitae die really easily. Is there some kind of condition that we could put into the application whereby if one of those dies within a certain time frame, it would be removed and replaced? Because, you know, I think the tower is something we need, even though really it's like an 11-story or 12-story thing in the middle of the town, and we don't have any other skyscrapers. But just to make it look reasonably kind of aesthetically pleasing, would that be a condition that we could add?
Well, I'm pulling up the original approval, and I guess the question for Scott is, I imagine that the design review would require the ongoing maintenance of the landscaping, and so that would be an ongoing condition of the original approval. So would we condition that here, or just more speak to implementation of that?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's more of a code compliance concern. So if the landscaping is not maintained and it dies, the conditions of approval and the approved plans specify that there's landscaping there, and the city would be in a sort of a code compliance posture, not, asking that they replace the landscaping. It's complaint driven though, so that's,
Could we make it a requirement? I mean, would that be possible, or it sounds like one of the neighbors would have to make an official complaint before the city would go to whoever it is to actually make sure that the tree was removed and replaced. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. I mean, we don't have the resources to proactively go out and scan the community to identify where the landscaping has failed. On the other hand, if, you know, the commission had, were to make a finding that given the exposure and the history of that property not being maintained, that you wanted to see some performance metrics around that, you could specify that. Our process is that we inspect the property before signing off on occupancy. So there is an inspection process there. And you could, as a conditional use permit, making the appropriate findings, you could specify a performance schedule on that.
Madam Chair, if I may just add to that, even if we were to add some sort of requirement or condition to that, it's still up to code enforcement whether it's complied with. So go back to where we started. So.
Commissioner Mansfield, just curious about what are the escalation methods there, just to have a better understanding of our process. So if this entity were to not, you know, just to start off compliant with landscaping, and then something were to fall through and go below that level, we got the appropriate complaints brought to the city. The city would then investigate, find that they were out of compliance, let the entity know, and then what are the steps there?
Yeah, so the process is, you know, the goal is to attain voluntary compliance. So there would be communication between the code compliance officer and the police department and the property owner, and with consultation through planning, reminding them that these are conditions of approval, they need to be met, and within a specified period of time, if they didn't perform on that, then they would be cited, and it's a civil infraction, so it's, you know, there's a penalty for non-compliance with the zoning code, and that's what this would be. So those are the sort of the carrots and sticks that we have to work with.
Got it. So they would get to a point where they'd have to pay a fine.
It could
if they
escalate to that.
continued. Okay, that's. Thank you.
So just to make sure I'm understanding properly, it's up to the neighbors or passers-by or whomever to make the complaint if the landscaping wasn't kept up to code or up to what the specifications were in this application.
Yeah, that's the typical standard approach by the city, and we don't have the resources, as I said, to go out and proactively scan the community for these concerns. On the other hand, if it was a concern that the planning commission identified, and as I said, if you were to make the appropriate findings based on the conditional use permit that you wanted to see a more rigorous inspection regime, then, you know, we would do that, but being mindful of limited staff resources.
Yeah, I doubt that that's necessary, but thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve PLNG -25-11, conditional use permit for minor modification of the tower at 500 East Illinois Street.
Do we have a second?
Can I request that to be as amended to?
As amended.
Commissioner Rickert will second.
Faye, could you go ahead and do the
All right,
roll call piece? Thanks.
Randy Rickert,
Yes.
Jason Dale,
Yes.
Chris Wright,
Yes.
Linda Newton Curtis,
Yes.
Matthew Mansfield, Jose Villapando,
Yes.
Okay, I think the motion passes. Any other items from staff?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought I would take this opportunity, if it's all right with you, just to combine the updates on items from staff and updates on items that have been before the Planning Commission that are now going to council. So as you may recall, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on vacation rental policy updates, code updates, and that is moved on to council, and Planner Dingwall's presented that in a work session. I believe it's going to a public hearing in
July seventh.
July 7th. Thank you. Next up on the Planning Commission's schedule, we have a series of meetings outlined for review of code maintenance updates. And so as you may recall, last year, staff brought forward a package of code maintenance amendments that were really more focused on housekeeping updates to the code, although there were some policy issues that advised on. We're planning on bringing the same approach, bringing code maintenance to the Planning Commission. So last year, I think what we found was that for that package of code changes were fairly routine and it didn't require a lot of process. I think you held one work session and then we went to a hearing. There were no significant policy issues that required more vetting or public outreach and engagement. This year, we have a number of code maintenance updates that are similar to that are more routine, that we'll be seeking your input on before we bring those to a hearing. There are also a number of code changes that potentially could be more policy sensitive that we'll want you to advise on whether they should move forward as part of that code maintenance package or not, or if they should be directed toward the Planning Division's annual work program. So for example, over the years, the city staff have been compiling lists of, for example, downtown and commercial design standards that are perhaps not as clear as they could be or not up to date. They really haven't modernized or updated with, materials and design details and those sorts of elements. So when we bring those up to the commission in that first work session in July, we'll be asking for your feedback and direction on, are these code changes that you would want to review and move forward as part of code maintenance, or again, carve them out as part of an annual work program. And some of those, of course, we'll want to seek city council direction on before really moving forward on those. So the process that we've outlined has two work sessions with the Planning Commission on code maintenance. The first would be to go over the outline, sort of the purpose and need for these code changes and the scope, so more at a concept level, and that would be in July on the 10th. The next meeting in August, on the 14th of August, would be to review some initial code language to look at the code as it's being constructed, and for you to provide input on that before we go to a public hearing. And then the public hearing, again, if subject to the Planning Commission's feedback and direction, would be in September. That would be the first public hearing. And so annual code maintenance is sort of a process of continuous improvement. It's something that we work on all year, but you only see it during that window of time when it comes before you for input. Other projects that are already underway and in fact are before council, as you may recall, the Planning Division had an update to the list of approved street trees on their list for the annual work program. As we've looked at that, there are two components to that, one of which is the list of trees that are really more of a guideline that hasn't been updated in many years. And planner Leanne has gone through that. She actually has a landscape architecture background, was trained in that field, and has practiced as a landscape architect. So we're very fortunate to have her. She's gone through that and put together a more comprehensive list of trees that are suitable based on different sort of criteria, based on the planting area, based on soil conditions, slope, and other considerations that we currently do not have in our code or in our guidelines. So that's the first piece of the street tree evaluation and update. The second component is looking at the policy and the code requirements for replanting of street trees when they're removed. And as you may recall, you may or not be aware, last year the City Council, based on public comment, directed that staff, in cases where trees were not required by code or not required as a result of an approved site plan or subdivision plan, where those trees were removed, where they were voluntarily planted, I should say, and subsequently removed, the council was hearing from community members that the code was ambiguous and that staff didn't really have or may not have the authority to require the replanting of those trees that were voluntarily planted in the first place. And so they asked us to review the code. And the language is subjective. It says that the city may require the replanting of trees in these situations. And so, and we need to be consistent in how we're administering the code. So as we bring the list of street trees to council for their approval, we're also asking for their direction on that policy and when should replanting be required and what's in what situations, and then subsequently bringing code amendments forward that would clarify that and codify it. So the way that process is laid out, it's not land use code. I would have thought that would have been in the land use code or the development code, but it's actually in Title 12, which is our streets and sidewalks regulations. So the tree removal and replacement requirements are in Title 12. If there are any code amendments that come out of that process in the course of discussing it with council next month that require changes to Title 15, that require amendments to the development code, then we'll be back to the Planning Commission to have you evaluate that and conduct public hearings on it. So that's a body of work that's moving forward. I just wanted you to be aware of it because it may not come to the Planning Commission, but it certainly affects the work that you do. And we would hope that street tree list would be of value when we're looking at site development plans and the projects that do come before the commission. Other projects, other planning work that's underway, the city will be submitting a grant application to ODOT next month for an update to our transportation system plan. The transportation plan hasn't been updated, I think, since 2016, and a lot's changed. We have the bypass that's under construction, or the first phase has been completed on that. And there's a lot to consider in an updated transportation plan. So provided that we're approved for funding on that, if we are approved for funding and we move forward, that would be a 2026, 2027 planning process. And that would come before the Planning Commission because transportation plans are an element of our comprehensive plan, and that's within the purview of the Planning Commission. Another grant application that we're preparing, or we will be preparing and submitting by August 6th, I believe, is to DLCD to update our housing element of our comprehensive plan, or what's referred to as the housing capacity analysis. And as you may recall, back in 2020, 2021, the city went through a process of evaluating its housing needs and buildable lands, and a whole study was prepared around that. And as it was advancing, and it did go through the Planning Commission, the commission at that time had recommended it. And the council, when it came to council, there was feedback that the conditions had changed to the extent in the community that they wanted to take a fresh look at it. They wanted to use a more recent population forecast, and they wanted to look at that based on the land supply that we have now. So I'm probably oversimplifying the council's deliberation and feedback on that, but both for the housing capacity analysis or housing needs and the housing production strategy, which is more of the action plan that follows that work, the council wanted to take a fresh look at it. So we're going back to the state, asking for funding to do that work in 2026, 27. The state has approved just a general schedule for all cities in the state that are subject to these requirements. And a number of other cities, including ours, are within the 2027, 2028 cohort. It's kind of, for lack of a better word, that's how I've described it, because there's some cities that are 2027, 28. There are others that are, I think, 28, 29. And we're on that earlier schedule to do the work because we haven't done it in many years. And so we're also, what we've been told is that we're a higher priority as far as funding to do this work. So we'll be back probably with Leanne to give a report to the Planning Commission on that, depending on what the outcome is on our grant application.
Director,
Yes.
isn't the usual schedule for that, isn't it? It's from PSU and it's 2030, I thought, or something like that?
So
Or am I
there-
thinking, I'm maybe thinking of a different thing.
Yeah, so Commissioner Dale, Portland State University is the Center for Population Research and Publication of Population Estimates. And they, and they're also charged with preparing the population forecast, so that's looking forward. Right, and so, the population forecast that we have to work with now, I believe is from 2024, so it was certified, I think, in July 2024. And that'll inform the work that we do if we begin that work next year. The next one, I believe, would be 4 years out. So it's more recent than 2020. Yeah, any other questions about what I've gone over so far? There's a lot, but there's a lot we wanted to give you a full update on. The economic opportunities analysis, which is the other sort of the sibling to the housing work that we did. And the commission did recommend approval on that, I think in 2021. That was put on pause while we were having these conversations with the state about our schedule and our scope. And we do have direction to bring that back to council for a final hearing and we hope adoption with some minor revisions to it based on changes in the scope that we've gone through. So that'll be moving forward. That'll also provide the foundation for looking at our urban growth boundary and determining how much land we need and what direction we look at for employment lands, which is a city council goal. Other than that, I don't have really anything to add. The list of work and projects that we were tracking, talking with Faye and the planning team about that, we're going to update that because there are a number of items that are listed there that, in fact, you've already processed. Like there were some changes to the institutional zone and some other code changes that we brought through during the last code maintenance package. And so we're going to go through and sort of clear out the ones that are already done, see if we can repackage them and put them in the right order for our work plan. And that concludes my schedule update and the forecast. It won't be this long next time.
You've been busy.
Yes, well, the whole team's been very busy.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Anything from the commissioners?
Yes, Commissioner Wright. I have two items. One is the city of Newburgh or Chehalem Park and Recreation or both going to be holding an official ceremony in Memorial Park of the now carved 101-year-old chunk from the redwood tree by local artist Reed Phillips?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out and we'll get back to the commission. That we do have in the lobby of City Hall, which you're all welcome and encouraged to see if you haven't already. There was a very beautiful sort of bench that was created from slabs of that redwood tree, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the artist who did that. It's in
It
City
was
Hall.
the Newburgh High School.
Oh, Newburgh High
The wood
School.
shop did it.
There you go.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. And then my second one is there was a Jess Euler. She reached out to some people on Facebook and she's been maintaining what she calls maintenance somewhere lies in a gray area between the city and ODOT. And this area she wanted to clean up invasives and weeds. And since this post started, there have been other people like Friends of Chehalem Trails that are willing to volunteer to help keep up the maintenance of these areas since there's a gray area. Is that possible for citizens to do that? And how could we form groups like that?
Commissioner Wright, what types of lands are we talking about? Again, I may have missed it. What are public, right?
They're all kind of all over the place in Newburgh. It's just kind of the properties where the probably in the right of way with either the city or ODOT that aren't really being maintained, like the grass is really high. it's not well maintained. Is it acceptable or possible for citizens to go out there and volunteer in those areas and even put in plants that crowd out invasive weeds as long as they're below the visual, um, not blocking visual line of sight while driving?
Yeah, so for those areas that are in the public right of way, or they might be in the public right of way and we're not sure, I would encourage anyone who is, who observes that to contact Public Works, and we have an app. And you can go, I can provide a link to that where you can go online and you can report areas that are overgrown or obscured and might be a safety hazard. And as far as community members volunteering, I don't know if we have a sort of a friends group or some sort of infrastructure around that that works with our Public Works crew. I can find out. I hadn't heard of anything like that before. I think
Yeah,
we
we
would
got
also,
a lot of property here, and it seems like that would be a great thing for citizens to be able to chip in if it's okay. Yes, I would like that, please.
I'll find out more about that from our Public Works Director. And we would also want to be really careful and, not encouraging people to plant things or put more things in the public right of way that could create a safety hazard. So,
Yeah, and this group, kind of this public group starting to talk, they're already aware of that and are looking at things like that grow less than like 6-7 inches just to crowd out weeds.
if I may, Commissioner Wright, if you want to, if we can talk offline or.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll email
Thank
and
you very much.
happy to help.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Any other items from commissioners? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.